Have you ever made a mistake that changed your entire life in a single heartbeat? Imagine stepping into an elevator, thinking it's just another day of struggle, another day of being invisible to the world. But when those doors slide open, you aren't just facing a CEO, you are facing a ghost from a past you thought was buried forever. Mark was a poor single dad holding onto his dignity by a thread. Elena was the billionaire ice queen who owned the city. When he stepped into her private elevator by mistake, she didn't call security. She gasped. And the reason why will shatter your heart and piece it back together. Stick with me until the very end of this story, because the secret hidden in that elevator reveals a truth about love, sacrifice, and destiny that you won't see coming. Call to action. Before we dive into this emotional roller coaster, please hit that like button if you believe that true love never really dies. And make sure to subscribe and turn on notifications so you never miss a story that touches the soul. Now, let's step into the elevator with Mark. The story. The rain in Seattle didn't wash things clean, it just made the grime slicker. Mark adjusted the collar of his worn-out jacket, checking his reflection in the darkened window of a coffee shop. The face staring back was tired. Deep lines etched around his eyes told the story of a man who hadn't slept properly in 3 years, not since his wife, Sarah, passed away, leaving him with a mountain of medical debt and their 4-year-old daughter, Lily. Lily was the sun in his gray universe, but the sun was expensive to keep shining. Between the rent for their cramped basement apartment and Lily's recurring asthma medication, Mark was drowning. Today was a Hail Mary. He had heard a rumor about a high-paying custodial job at the Pinnacle Tower, the gleaming obsidian needle that pierced the skyline of the financial district. It was a place for gods, not for men with holes in their shoes. But Mark was desperate. He had exactly $12 in his bank account, and rent was due in 3 days. He wiped his wet hands on his trousers, took a deep breath that tasted of exhaust fumes and anxiety, and pushed through the revolving doors of the Pinnacle. The lobby smelled like money, a mix of expensive leather, ozone, and cold ambition. Mark felt the security guard's eyes on him immediately. He kept his head down, clutching the crumpled resume in his pocket. He was supposed to go to the service entrance, but in his nervousness, he got turned around. He saw a set of golden doors sliding open. Assuming it was the general lift, he rushed forward, slipping between the closing doors just as they sealed him in. Silence. Absolute, pressurized silence. Mark exhaled, leaning against the back wall, closing his eyes for a second. When he opened them, he realized his mistake. This wasn't a service elevator. It was lined with velvet and mirrors. There were no buttons, just a single keycard slot. And he wasn't alone. Standing in the corner, looking at a tablet, was a woman who radiated power like a physical force. She wore a tailored white suit that probably cost more than Mark had earned in his entire life. Her hair was pulled back in a severe, elegant bun. She tapped the screen, indifferent to the intruder, until the smell of wet wool and rain reached her. She looked up. The air left the elevator. The tablet slipped from her fingers and clattered onto the carpeted floor, a sound like a gunshot in the quiet space. Mark froze. He prepared for the yelling, for the security call, for the humiliation. "I'm so sorry, ma'am, I took the wrong." "Mark?" The voice was a whisper, trembling and broken. It didn't match the Ice Queen exterior. It was the voice of a girl he used to know a lifetime ago. Mark squinted, looking past the diamonds and the designer makeup. He looked into her eyes, hazel, flecked with gold. The memory hit him like a physical blow to the chest. Ellie? It was Elena Vance. The CEO of Vance Global. The woman on the cover of every business magazine. But to Mark, she was just Ellie, the scholarship student he had loved during his sophomore year of college, the girl who had vanished without a trace 10 years ago. Elena took a step forward, her hand covering her mouth. Her eyes scanned his face, reading the map of his suffering, the gray in his beard, the hollowness of his cheeks, the frayed collar of his shirt. "My God, Mark. What happened to you?" Mark felt a sudden, burning shame. He backed into the corner of the elevator. "Life, Ellie. Life happened." She reached out to touch his arm, but the elevator chimed. They had reached the penthouse. The doors slid open to reveal a sprawling office with a panoramic view of the city. A team of assistants was waiting. When they saw Mark, dripping wet, looking like a vagrant, they surged forward. "Ms. Vance." "Security breach," a man in a sharp suit yelled, reaching for a radio. "Stop." Elena's voice cracked like a whip. She didn't look away from Mark. "He's with me. Cancel my meetings. All of them." She gestured for Mark to follow her. He hesitated. He thought of the resume in his pocket, the eviction notice on his table, and Lily waiting at the neighbor's house. He stepped out of the elevator and into the billionaire's world. Inside her office, the dynamic shifted. Elena poured 2 glasses of water, her hands shaking slightly. She sat opposite him on a plush sofa, ignoring the stain his jacket was leaving on the upholstery. "You disappeared," Mark said, the old hurt rising up through the embarrassment. 10 years ago. You went to the store and never came back." Elena looked down. "I didn't have a choice, Mark. My father, he found me. He threatened to destroy your life if I didn't come home and take my place in the family dynasty. He was going to frame you for a crime you didn't commit. I left to save you." Mark sat in stunned silence. He had spent a decade thinking she had abandoned him because he was poor, because he wasn't good enough. "I waited for you," he whispered. "For a year, I waited. I watched you from afar," Elena admitted, tears spilling over. "I saw you marry Sarah. I saw you have a daughter. I stayed away because I wanted you to be happy. I thought you were happy." "Sarah died," Mark said bluntly. The words always tasted like ash. "Cancer. 3 years ago. The medical bills took everything. The house, the car, the savings. Now I'm here trying to get a job cleaning your toilets just so I can buy my daughter an inhaler." Elena gasped again, the sound ragged. The billionaire facade crumbled completely. She wasn't a CEO anymore, she was a woman looking at the only man she had ever loved, seeing him crushed by a system she helped control. "You need a job?" she asked softly. "I need a miracle, Ellie. But a job will do." She stood up, walked to her desk, and pulled out a checkbook. Mark stood up immediately. "No. I don't want your charity. I didn't come here to beg from an old ex." Elena paused. She smiled, a sad, nostalgic smile. "You always were stubborn. Fine. No charity. I need a personal liaison. Someone I trust to handle my private affairs, things I can't trust the board with. It pays $80,000 a year, plus benefits. Full medical." Mark felt his knees go weak. Full medical, that meant Lily would be safe. I don't know anything about corporate life. You know about people, Mark. You were always the kindest man I knew. That's what this company lacks. Kindness." Mark took the job. The next few months were a blur. Mark moved Lily out of the damp basement and into a clean, warm apartment. He bought her new clothes, toys, and most importantly, the best doctors managed her asthma. He showed up to work in suits Elena had tailored for him. But the corporate world was a shark tank. The board of directors, led by a man named Sterling, hated Mark. They saw him as a threat, a nobody who had the CEO's ear. Sterling dug into Mark's past, looking for dirt. He found nothing but tragedy, but that didn't stop him from whispering rumors. Asterisk, he's a gold digger. He's manipulating her, asterisk. Despite the whispers, Mark and Elena grew closer. They worked late nights. They laughed over takeout food in her multi-million-dollar office. Mark saw the loneliness behind Elena's success. She had everything, but she had nothing. One rainy Tuesday, Mark brought Lily to the office because her school closed early. He was terrified Elena would be annoyed. Instead, when Elena walked in and saw the little girl coloring on the floor, she froze. Lily looked up, her eyes wide. "Are you the princess of the tower?" Elena dropped to her knees, disregarding her silk skirt. "I suppose I am," she smiled. Mark watched as Elena played with his daughter. He saw the mother she never got to be. His heart, which he thought had died with Sarah, began to beat a new rhythm. But the climax of their story came 2 weeks later. Sterling made his move. He accused Mark of corporate espionage, planting fake documents in Mark's digital files. Security came to escort Mark out. It was a public humiliation in the lobby of the tower. "I didn't do it," Mark shouted, looking for Elena. But she was in a board meeting, unreachable. Sterling smirked. "Go back to the gutter, trash." Mark went home, defeated. He looked at Lily, sleeping peacefully. He packed their bags. He couldn't fight billionaires. He was just Mark. But he underestimated Elena. When she emerged from her meeting and heard what happened, she didn't call legal. She didn't call PR. She went to the security server room. She demanded the raw footage. She spent 6 hours watching tapes until she saw Sterling's assistant logging into Mark's terminal at 3 a.m. She didn't just fire Sterling, she destroyed him. She went public with the evidence. Then, she got in her car. Not the driver, she drove herself. She sped to Mark's apartment building. Mark was loading the trunk of his rusted sedan. He looked up to see the sleek black car screech to a halt. Elena stepped out into the rain, no umbrella, her hair plastered to her face. "You didn't fight," she yelled over the thunder. "Why didn't you fight for yourself?" "Because I'm nobody," Mark yelled back. "And you're the sky." "I don't want to be the sky." Elena ran to him, grabbing his soaked shirt. "I want to be down here. With you. I spent 10 years building a kingdom that feels like a prison. Mark, the day you walked into that elevator, I started breathing again." Mark looked at her. He saw the fear in her eyes, the fear of losing him a second time. "I have a daughter, Ellie. My life is messy. It's not a penthouse. I hate the penthouse," she sobbed. "I love you. I loved you when we were 20, and I love you now." Mark dropped the suitcase. He pulled her close, kissing her in the pouring rain, erasing 10 years of pain, 10 years of separation. The resolution. They didn't just get married and live happily ever after. That's a fairy tale. This was real life. Mark kept his job, but he made changes. He started a foundation within the company to help single parents. Elena stepped down as CEO to become the chairwoman, freeing up her time to be a stepmother to Lily. 3 years later, they took the elevator together. Not the private one, but the main one, packed with employees. Mark held Lily's hand, and Elena held Mark's. A young man rushed in at the last second, looking terrified, holding a mop bucket. He saw Elena and froze, expecting to be scolded. Elena smiled at him. "Morning. Take your time." The young man breathed a sigh of relief. Mark squeezed Elena's hand. He knew that the greatest wealth in the world wasn't the building they were standing in. It was the fact that a wrong turn had led him to the right place. He had taken the wrong elevator, but he had arrived exactly where he was meant to be. Video outro and message. What a journey. Mark and Elena remind us that no matter how dark the night gets, destiny has a way of finding us. Sometimes, the thing that feels like a mistake, a wrong turn, a missed opportunity, a stumble, is actually the universe guiding you to your door. Mark didn't give up on his daughter, and because of that love, he found a new life. Elena didn't let her wealth harden her heart permanently. If this story touched you, please leave a comment below saying, "Love is the greatest wealth." I'd love to hear your thoughts. Don't forget to like this video, it really helps the channel grow, and subscribe for more stories that inspire, heal, and entertain. Until next time, keep your head up. You never know who you might meet in the elevator.